Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I've got a standard card, the Lawn Fawn Easter Party stamp set, the Bugs and Kisses stamp set. I have the Bayou backdrop and I'm using a few pieces from that. I've actually cut 3 of the ducks out and one of them I'm going to actually turn over so that he's facing the other way. And I also cut out the water that goes with it. And then I've got the How You Been add-on, which is the shaker add-on. And what I did was I cut 2 more of that solid piece and then used the grassy border at different heights on it so that it lines up with the jar. And then I have a piece of, it's basically from this stitched rectangle, the largest of the large stitched rectangle die set. But I forgot to show that on camera, obviously. So I'm going to use the Firefly from the Bugs and Kisses, and I'm just going to stamp this a few times with some Memento ink. I think I did it about 5 times or something. Yeah, 5 times. Couldn't remember if it was 5 or 6. And then I have a BG10, which is just a cool shadow for the wings, and I was going to try and do some fancy flicking motion, but then in the end I decided this was just a simple colored image, so I'm just going to color the whole thing in. Very simple, very easy. And then I have a Sharpie in a neon yellow. So I know it sounds a bit weird, but it works really well for the firefly's butt. So I thought that was kind of funny. And then for this die set, I actually have the coordinating dies, so I decided to use them because it was only the one image that I needed to die cut, so I didn't want to get my scanner cut out for that. So that was just a happy coincidence. If not, I would have used it. And then I'm going to take some Blueprint Sketch and Salty Ocean Distressings and these I have makeup brushes, but you can use some of the blending brushes that are in the craft industry, and I'm just going to blend onto that stitched rectangle, going with the Salty Ocean to start with, and then I'll bring in the Blueprint Sketch on top of that eventually. And I kind of wanted this sort of nighttime, spring nighttime sort of sky. Or at least that's what's in my head still, because we're only just in spring. And I think really I should have either used better paper, because the cardstock will make a big difference when you're blending. And I think I'll probably, although I will pick up any white piece of cardstock and just try and see what happens with it, which normally for these ones it's not too bad, but it seemed quite splotchy for some reason. In the end you can't really see it, so it's not a big deal. But when I was doing this, I couldn't get the blueprint sketch to really blend nicely. It sort of felt like it was almost blotchy, which I didn't really like. So I might go back to just sort of either Tim Holtz and Ranger's watercolor papers and mixed media papers, or I may go back to like Bristol Smooth is awesome for blending with distressings. It glides over the top. It's fab. And then I took some of the the Salty Ocean over the edge, and the Blueprint Sketch over the edge of the pond that cuts out of that die set, just so that it's got its own definition. And then I realized I put a big old splodge of ink in the middle of it, but you're not going to see that later on, so don't worry about that. We're going to cover it up. And then of course I spritzed with some water, and it does react really well on that cardstock. It's not watercolor cardstock, so you're not going to get that same effect, as in you can't keep going over and over like you can with the a lot of watercolor papers where you can create all those extra layers and techniques, but it works. So for what I wanted, at least. So on the jar itself I'm going to use the tumbled glass distressing, and just so that it's got that glass like look to it. And I'm doing it on both pieces because, well, it's a glass jar, so you're going to have that on both. What I could have done, which could have been quite a neat idea, is to actually have two of the like cutout pieces, so the one that sort of fits on the front, and then had a piece of acetate in one of them so that you could see right through the whole thing. So that's another idea for you. So instead of the solid piece for the back, you use the same sort of frame piece. And then on the bayou backdrop, I'm just taking some mowed lawn and twisted citron distressings again. They're my favorite for blending, you know that. And I'm just, especially on where these little vine things come down, I'm just sort of going from darker to lighter, just for that sort of contrast. And I think I just used the mowed lawn on that one because it's the darker of things. And then on these little grassy pieces, I'm using the twisted citron first, just going over the whole thing. And then normally I would go with the mowed lawn on the top, but I'm actually going to do it from the bottom, because if the glowworms, not the glowworms, the glow bug, no, what are they called? Fireflies. If they're glowing, the top of the grass is gonna glow, not, it will sort of have that light hit it. So it's actually going to be the other way around. So I tried to think that way for once. I don't normally worry about light sources or anything like that, so, but this just worked. So, and then I'm taking some brushed corduroy and going around with another teeny tiny little brush around my little ducks. And I'll show you in a second. I'm actually going to turn one of them around, so that's the right way around, and I'm actually going to turn him, flip him over so that I can have him facing the other way. I do go over him, I just sort of rub over him, because when you die cut, it creates this like beveled edge, so when you turn it over, it's going to have almost like a square edge. So I do just flatten that out a bit. And then on these grassy pieces, I've put some double-sided tape, and then on the frame of the jar in the top left, or the left of the jars, I've got a flat piece of adhesive, so just double-sided tape on the very bottom, and then I've got 2 layers of double-sided tape on the top part of the jar, because I want the whole thing to be level. And this is where I'm creating this sort of diorama within the jar. So I'm not using it as a shaker element, I suppose, or a shaker jar, but I'm using it to create this sort of diorama of layers where you can then put in whatever you want to put inside the jar. So in this instance, I've got these little bugs that I'm going to put in there. So I'm going to use some glue dots just to stick them in there, and the glue dots are handy for things like this, especially when it's, you know, sort of small areas and you just want to get it in there and stuck. But a wet adhesive would work just as well. I think double-sided tape is fine, but it's more fiddly, I think, for something that shape and that small. So I'm going to start putting my scene together. So I've got the background piece all dry, and then the I'm just lining up the frame of the bayou backdrop just so I can see where I'm going to put my sort of pond water. And I thought maybe I'd pop this part up, but I decided to leave it flat. I think the main piece is the jar, so although the whole thing's going to create the scene, that main piece, the main element, I guess, is the jar in the middle, so I wanted that to really stand out. So this is a bit of a different card for me, but I thought it was quite cute in the end. So when I come to sticking this down, the jar down, it's going to be stuck down flat, just straight onto, because there's lots of dimension in the jar itself, so I didn't need to add that more of that to the card. And then where that splotches, that's where we're going to cover that up, so yay. Don't have to look at it. And I put it at a bit of an angle, thinking maybe it's in the water, but you know. In hindsight, I probably could have put more water in here and added some of those are they bulrushes or cattails, which are also in the die set as well, so you could easily just cut them out and add them in, just for some extra stuff on the card. But in the end, I just this card kind of, I had an idea of what I wanted for this card, but it didn't totally work, so I just ran with it at this point. So I didn't think about adding the the cattails and extra things like that till much later. So yeah, but anyway. And then the extra fireflies, I'm just sticking them randomly outside the jar, so it's like they're coming out of the jar now to come and play, if fireflies play, I don't know. And then to add some extra bling, I've got a glaze pen in like a black glaze, and this is great for eyes on all your critters. So I'm using it and just dotting it, and as I dot it within the hole that the die's created for the ducks, it sort of pulls up, and so it sort of fills that where the eye would be cut out. So I don't have to stick a tiny little piece of cardstock in there for the eyes. And then on the sort of bums of the of the fireflies, I used the clear Sakura. These are Sakura pens, Sakura jelly roll pens, and I used a clear glitter, which is just really pretty and really iridescent. It's got a gold hint to it. And then I just dotted it all over the background. I figured it would be quite cute for like a moonlit sort of thing. That was the idea anyway. And then I just added a few lines and dots. Normally I would do this in a white gel pen, but I figured because it's on glass and it's nighttime, that would be quite cute like that. And then with the white jelly roll pen, I put some little cheeks on the ducks. I don't know if ducks have cheeks, but they do now. And then I added just a few lines to the ducks where the feathers are, where the wings are, sorry. And then couldn't decide where else I wanted it, so I left it. So for the inside of the card, I'm going to use a couple of the stamps from the Easter Party Lawn Fawn set, and I'm just going to line these up as best I can, and then get them stamped in. I think in the end I actually stamped them separately because I didn't like how they were lining up, so I'll stamp the spring separately, and then the first part of the sentiment I'll stamp that on first. And then it's just easier to line it up a little sometimes. Sometimes the stamp says, depending on the words, you can't get the word underneath in between. You can do it afterwards because you can line it up better, like here. But if I was trying to put the stamps next to each other, they don't always line up. So sometimes it's easier just to do them separately. And then I'm just going to stick this to a white side fold card base. Or top fold, is this the top fold version? I don't know. If I've got something heavier, I actually use the side, with the folds on the side, just because I feel like if it's a little heavy, with all the layers of card, then it will stand up for longer. I don't want it sort of in that tent shape. I don't want it to suddenly splay out. But anyway, and that's it. That's the card for today. So it's very easy. Yes, there's more die cuttings, a little bit of stamping, but it's just, it's a cute card. It didn't completely turn out how I expected it, but I still like it. And I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope that you drag out some of your old stamps and dies and give them a whirl. And I will see you next time, guys. Bye.